make you feel whole again when you conduct an event and you lose somebody during the course of that event.
Yeah. Now you were talking about like the football game where someone left them, and that made me think of the Chicago Bears when we could have advanced into the playoffs.
I was maybe thinking a little about that. Being from Philadelphia, and my daughter was at the game. We watched that and couldn't believe the outcome. We're big Eagles fans, and Chicago pretty much outplayed them the second half anyway. But they iced Parkey with just before he kicked it right down the middle, and I was almost relieved for him because when Allie left the stadium, Chicago fans take football pretty serious.
Oh, yeah.
And when you're an Eagles fan in Chicago territory and you want to stand up and cheer, she learned pretty quickly to sit in her seat, watch the game, mind her business. And it was unfortunate. A lot of people were chanting, Parkey sucks and whatever else. He had, I guess, hit the uprights a couple other times, too.
Yeah.
But I was felt better the next day when it turned out that one of the Eagles defenders got maybe just a finger on the ball, but enough to maybe redirect it just enough.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's the way professional sports is. I learned that with my red light at Indy. It was only, a couple hundredths of a second, but it's over, it's done, there's no recourse, it's over. And in that football game, the Eagles got to play on.
Yeah.
And there was a bad call yesterday in the Rams-Saints game. It's over.
Yep.
And when you look at that play in real time, you could see where maybe the ref, from a certain angle, might have just not made the call. When you look at all the replays on the Today Show and on Sports Center and everything else, and they play it in slow motion, okay, sure, you can see that the ball is still 3 or 4 feet away from the receiver's hands when there's contact. But in real time, it's hard to see that.
Right.
Anyway, that's just the way sports is. Sometimes it isn't fair, but ultimately, it's always final. Somebody wins, somebody loses, and sometimes as a driver, it's your fault. I'm looking at a picture on the screen, or on my wall here. I was driving Bob Godfrey's car, and I think it was at the March meet in 12, and I was sick as a dog, and I probably shouldn't have been out there, and I crossed the center line. I hit both 8-mile cones, and Josh Crawford missed me by about a foot. That one was pretty embarrassing, and Ron Capps was in the car right behind me. So I guess that would be the third embarrassing moment. Yeah, I'm looking at a picture of it, and by the way, I hit one of the cones and then hit it a second time, and it rolled up under the body. I have it. So at first, it was the last thing I ever wanted to see. That picture was posted on Facebook and on some other coverages, but it's part of life. I've learned to get over it. Josh Crawford's still a good friend. His car didn't hit my car, so everything ended up okay. And it was a lesson and an experience that I'll never forget, and I hope I never have to relive. I'm just glad everybody was okay, and the car came out okay. And when you drive somebody else's car, the last thing you want to do is, I don't care if they leave the rod bolts loose. I still don't want to bring it back broke. But it's pretty exciting. When you get to make a run, I'd driven for Bob earlier at the reunion in 11 and made the best run that car had ever made. I made the best run in a couple of other cars, and to say that I made the quickest run ever in a Tom Conway car means a lot to me. And the same thing with Anthony DeCiro's cars and Justin Grant's car. I made the only 5 that car made. That means a lot to me, but sometimes it goes the other way, and as a driver, you got to suck it up and acknowledge when you screw up. So
that was the Burning Money car?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I drove that car twice. I drove it in 2011. Justin was on his way out of funny car racing, and we had a pretty crappy season in 2011. We didn't run real well, and I love those guys. I had a great time racing with them, but I thought, I don't want to just quit. And I've always wanted to race in Bakersfield. So somebody introduced me to Bob Godfrey, and we made a deal. And Bob said, well, come on out and drive my car. So it wasn't a car that was maybe one of the top 5 picks to win the event, but it was a pretty good, steady car. And Caps had driven the car, and a few other people I knew had driven the car. And Bob's a great guy, and he had a couple of really good guys with him. So, and it was a twin to Justin Grant's car, the Stardust car that had previously been the Wonder Wagon. So I fit right in, felt comfortable, and we ran a 590 flat, which qualified at that time, and ultimately we got bumped. But we raced as an alternate, and I almost beat Mark Hinch's and Bucky's car first round. And I was pretty amped up and caught a pretty good light, and then hit the ship button a little early, and they drove around me. But I thought, I really enjoyed this. I need to come back and do it again. And the interesting thing to me, you're familiar with Bakersfield, and there's 2 big events out there for nostalgia cars. The reunion event, and I was part of that committee when I worked for NHRA when we started that. So I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the California Hot Rod Reunion, and the March Meet, which is the old traditional. It's the ultimate racers race. So I made a deal to run the reunion, and we did okay. So I came back to run the March Meet, and that's where I ran over the cones and almost got sideswiped by Josh Crawford. And so I went home, and I really didn't feel good physically, but I was even more embarrassed. So a couple of years later, after the Nitro Nick experience, in 2015, I went back to the March Meet to drive the Nitro Nick car. And not only did I not qualify, it was the second time, the only second of 2 times I ever went over the center line. And I had this brainstorm watching 3 cars instantly spin the tires off the line that I'm going to hold the brake a little bit. So we leave okay. We get out there about a car length and a half. The front wheels are in the air. But when the front wheels come down, I'm still holding the brake, and the car makes a left turn. And I just caught the 330 cone, and I thought, geez, what is it about this event? I can't do anything wrong at the reunion, and I can't do anything right at the March Meet. But even stranger than that, of all the races I've ever done there, and I've gone a lot of rounds at the reunion. We won it in 2012. I've never made a 5-second run in the right lane. Every good run I've ever made was in the left lane. I ran 6 flat in qualifying one year, and the throttle linkage fell off. Okay, not my fault, no big deal. We were already qualified at 580. I won a round against Chad Head where, I carried the front wheels over the 330-foot clocks, and Chad smoked the tires, so I got lucky there and then moved back over into the left lane and won the final. But it's just funny how things work, and I'm comfortable in the right lane. I just don't do well. I'm comfortable at the March Meet, and I'd love to do well there, but it just hasn't worked out. But bottom line, that's all part of it.
Yep.
I think, if people ever write up all the key things that ever happened in drag racing, I'm not even a footnote. But to me, those are memories that'll last a lifetime.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, now, Mike, I'm going to ask you a few fun questions here, then we'll finish off this interview. Ready for a few fun questions here now?
Sure, bring it on.
Now, outside of being involved with drag racing, do you have any hobbies?
I like to play golf. I've got a Harley. I used to do some scuba diving. Used to do a little skydiving.
Skydiving? No, I don't think I could do that.
Just tandems, but, we did a couple of jumps here in Indiana. My daughter and I did a jump in Lake Perris, California. I did one with the Golden Knights. So I wouldn't call myself a skydiver, but I have been skydiving.
All right. Now, who's your pick for the Super Bowl? Patriots or the Rams?
If if I was betting money, I'd have to bet money on the Patriots. I'd love to see the Rams pull it off. I mean, geez, how do you not respect Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and that whole organization? And I think the most amazing graphic I saw on the Patriots-Chiefs game was when they showed that 36 Patriots players have played in a total of 123 championship games. Of all the players on the roster of the Kansas City Chiefs, none of them had ever played a single championship game. That tells you about a dynasty since Tom Brady became the quarterback. And ironically, I follow trivia stuff, and then some things just... Drew Bledsoe was the quarterback for the Patriots, and I think it was 2002, and he was hurt, so this middle round draft pick named Brady comes in, and that's the Tom Brady who 17 years later is going to the Super Bowl for the umpteenth time. Bledsoe then went to the Cowboys and was hurt again, and Tony Romo came off the bench and had a pretty good career. I don't know. How do you not pick the Patriots? And yet, I'd kind of like to see the Rams do it.
Yeah, same here. I would love to see the Rams win. Now, have you won any trophies or plaques throughout your drag racing career?
Have I won trophies outside of drag racing?
No, in drag racing, plaques, trophies, anything?
Well, I've got, of course, the trophy from Bakersfield. I got a trophy that I wasn't supposed to win. While I was managing IRP, we did what was called the McDonald's Pro-Am. And we'd invite 15 corporate partners, and they paid a pretty good fee, and they would be partnered with an NHRA Pro driver, and they would race Pontiac. I think they were Firebirds. We'd play golf one day and then race these Trans Ams the next day, and they had an opening, so they slotted me into the last spot, and I ended up with Don Prudhomme as my teammate. He was my co-driver. So we do our round of golf, and that's fair game. And whatever happened there, I don't recall. So we were paired up in the first round with Shelly Anderson and the head from Western Auto who sponsored her. And Snake says, well, we got to go at least a couple rounds. So he's in one ear. My conscience is saying, wait a minute, I work for NHRA. I didn't pay any money all these other guys did to be here. But Snake says, don't worry about that. We're not going to lose first round. You don't want to embarrass me. Well, of course not. So we go out, and as it turns out, the guy that's driving Shelley's car isn't very experienced, so we beat him. Second round, we raced Brandon Bernstein. Might have been Kenny Bernstein. It would have been Kenny Bernstein and his guy from Budweiser. Of course, Prudhomme was sponsored by Miller. And Prudhomme says, we ain't losing to Budweiser. All right, Snake. I mean, I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, and he could just tunnel into you with his eyes. And at that point, I lost my devotion to the NHRA marketing department. I said, all right, Snake, we're going to go for it. And we win that round. The third round, we're racing Jed Coughlin Sr. and Jed Coughlin Jr. And these guys are both racers. So I thought, well, I've got to give it everything I've got because these guys are going to do the same thing. And I'm certainly not taking advantage of anybody. These guys have a whole lot more racing experience than I do. And we snuck by that round. So we're in the final. And I really should have just taken a dive in the first round. So the final was now Larry Dixon and the Miller guy against Prudhomme and me. And Prudhomme, of course, Dixon works for him, and he knows the Miller guy. He said, look, don't worry about anything. We're going to beat him. And that's so we did. So I got this trophy, and by the time I got back to California, there was an entire department of people in Glendora not happy with me. And I really knew better. It was a bad business decision for me to go out there and actually race instead of just, driving down the track and letting somebody who had earned or who had kind of paid their way in go for it. But then I had never actually been in an elimination race in my life prior to that. So I have a trophy for that, and it's a full-size NHRA Wally, and I still got my suit, and I still got all the other stuff that went with it. And most of those people from NHRA, I think, have forgiven me. Sadly, some of them are that was 20-some years ago, but I'll never forget how intense Don Prudhomme was in the passenger seat of a Pontiac Trans Am at kind of a glorified customer race. That's how competitive he was, and we won it. If I'd have had anybody else in the passenger seat other than maybe Garlitz or somebody, I would have. I knew right from wrong, and I didn't want to disappoint my partner. So we went out, we won it.
No, that was a great story.
Yeah, I haven't told that story very much. I've got that trophy inside a closet, and I look at it every now and then, and it reminds me of we had a good day, Snake and I, but it was not a smart way to deal with a situation. As a professional, I knew better.
Yeah. Now, for you, if you were able to do time traveling, Mike, and go back into time, would you do anything differently with your career in drag racing?
Yeah, I'd probably make a few things different. I think realistically, no. I'm really very fortunate with the way things turned out. I'm very glad that my grandfather asked me to announce and my father convinced me to take on managing Maple Grove. As a Top Fuel racer, I don't know that I would have made it, and I probably would have got hurt. Let's be honest. So I consider myself very lucky to be healthy. I'm very grateful for two beautiful kids that are my best friends, and a wife that has come into my life later I was in my 50s by that time, who really supports me in the things I like to do, and I owe it to her for the things she likes to do. So we have a really nice life together. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to work for Don Schumacher and with the greatest group of people I've ever worked with at DSR. Would I do some things different? Yeah, I guess if I thought about it long enough, I might do a few things a little different. Probably a few times in my life where, when you learn a lesson from doing something the wrong way, you learn and you try to do something differently with a better outcome. You learn how something that you do maybe affects somebody else in a way that you didn't intend. So, yeah, I've probably learned a few things along the way.
So how old are your two kids now?
My daughters are in their 40s.
Now, did they like drag racing?
Well, Allie worked for Don from 2000 to 2008 and then worked for Alan Johnson all the way through last year. She's engaged to Mike Neff, who's Tony's crew chief. So I'd say yes. When she was a little kid and we lived in Pennsylvania, if I had to be at the track by 6 a.m., she would be in my car, afraid that I would leave without her. My older daughter works for Kaiser Health in San Diego and has done very well for herself. And she loves coming to the races from the social aspect. She loves she just loves seeing her friends and kind of dropping in and having lunch with DSR. And she'll typically bring a couple of friends with her. And Jen is a very social person. Allie's love for racing is pure. And we've gone to various kinds of racing. She really understands the sport. And she was at that Bears-Eagles game. We just went to the Pacers. She loves Philadelphia sports because that's where she grew up. And we went to see the Pacers play the Sixers the other night. And the Sixers killed the Pacers, which made her happy, and I've converted to being an Indiana fan. But those are my daughters, and yeah, they love racing, but they come at the sport from different angles. And it was fun to see them drive that day at Frank Hawley School in Pomona. Allie's such a natural. If she had chosen to be a professional driver, she understands how cars work, how race cars work. When she was 9 or 10 years old and she'd jump on my lawnmower, she just instantly knew how everything worked. She could steer it, back it up. I mean, she just has a knack for all those kinds of things. Jen, maybe not quite so much. Little practice, and she does okay. But it took a while for her to understand that in a super comp car, it was okay to do a full throttle burnout. You don't have to feather it like you're driving on a freeway on-ramp. And when you leave the starting line, it's okay to keep your foot planted if you're comfortable and the car's going straight. The car's meant to be driven that way. And it took her a while to get comfortable driving at full throttle, where Allie just jumped in the car and like I say, she was a natural. But that's just part of their personalities. They're great sisters, and I'm very proud. I love my girls. I'm very proud that they're my daughters and that they've done well.
Now, do you have any grandkids?
Yeah, we do on my wife's side. And they call me Grandpa Mike. So they range from, let's see, they're 10, 12, 14, and 16. And the youngest, Gavin, is my buddy. We play golf together, but I love them all. And it really has kind of rounded out my life here at Indy, where, you know, I came here pretty much on my own from the West Coast. And after a separation, I started over. And it took a little while, and Vicki gave me the family. And I was single for quite a few years, but she gave me a family, and that has fully rounded my life. In some respects, the best thing that ever happened to me was meeting Vicki and marrying her, and her family became my family, and now our family together. You know, we do Thanksgiving together, we do Christmas together. We'll see family around the country when we travel, and it really is a beautiful thing.
Wow, that's awesome, Mike. Now, if you and Vicki have time to take a vacation, do you guys have a favorite vacation spot to go to?
We used to do Key West every year between Christmas and New Year. We tend to like warm weather and islands and water, and we've done some diving, and we've done, some things like that. She went with us to Abu Dhabi. We've gone to Sweden together. There's a couple destinations in Europe that are at the top of her list, and I still keep kidding her when she says, "Where do you want to go?" And I'll say, Bakersfield or Cordova. I'm still at that age where I'm still engaged with everybody that's out there racing, and I kind of hate to miss an event where I know that, when I go to those races, even if I'm not racing, it's kind of a mini reunion.
Right.
And I drove to Cordova, not this past year, but the year before, after it had been in Memphis and that fiasco. I really wanted to go see it come back to life, and it did, thank God. But I drove up there, spent just a couple hours, and I watched the first round, and I was back home in Indiana by, 1 in the morning or whatever, so I could play golf with Gavin the next day. So it's kind of a mini reunion, and in our sport, if you're going to go to these places, you got to work for it, because they're not, across town. They're 5 hours this way or 4 hours that way or whatever. But if that's where your friends are, that's where my heart is. I owe it to her. We need to go explore the rest of the world. And, we'll probably spend some time in Europe. She likes Italy, and I'm okay with that. I'm probably not a fan of, Paris probably isn't on the top of my list right now, but there's a lot of places over there I'd like to see as well.
All right, now here's an easy question for you, Mike. What is your favorite food to eat?
I like sushi.
Sushi. Now,
I mean,
does Vicky cook?
oh, she cooks. Yeah, she really. I mean, most of the years that we've been together, she's been working. She just retired, so we didn't take the time to cook as often as we should have. But every now and then, we really do enjoy cooking together. We have family here over the weekend, so even if it's just making breakfast, it's kind of fun to just use your kitchen and your dining room and be a family. But yeah, I mean, she's terrific. But yeah, I mean, sushi probably comes to mind as we try to explore a sushi restaurant every place we go, and sometimes we're impressed, and sometimes maybe not so much. But you go back to the ones that Dragonfly in Gainesville or Sushi to Die For in San Rafael up near Sonoma. There's a few that we go to every year, and then you always look for that little hole in the wall that's got something that's just special. And I mean, there's nothing better than a cheeseburger at Sloppy Joe's on New Year's Eve. So I'm not a food snob by any means.
Yeah, my wife loves Sloppy Joe's.
Yeah. Or actually, my favorite cheeseburger was across the street at Hog's Breath, where she poured some cocktail sauce on my cheeseburger instead of ketchup, and it turned out I do it all the time now. I mean, it was so good. Just a kind of a little happy accident.
Really, cocktail sauce, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, now, what's your favorite beverage to drink?
Depends on the circumstance. There's nothing like a cold beer on a really hot day when you're doing an outdoor project and you're finished with it. I don't know. I mean, a latte at Starbucks on a cold day. Sometimes a good glass of really cold, clear water is as good as it gets.
Yeah. All right, now, what's your favorite movie of all time, Mike?
Oh, by the way, I forgot. I do like visiting Napa and sampling wine, too. My favorite movie of all time, I don't know, Top Gun was pretty good. Oh, there's one that I'm thinking of, and I can't think what it was called. Having met through the Infinite Hero Foundation, Marcus and Morgan Luttrell, The Lone Survivor was a frightening movie to have met the survivor. Gosh, and after all the time that we spent with Army and just quietly when you'd get a chance to talk to some of the Rangers and their special ops people, and then you meet somebody like Marcus Luttrell, and we didn't sit down and become buddies, but just to understand what he did and survived, and what he did for our country, and that he volunteered to do that. I mean, the biggest thing I learned from being involved in all those years with the Army and meeting all the soldiers is they all volunteer. They volunteer to walk into a recruiting office and sign a contract to serve their country. And then those that move up through the ranks and become Rangers and go airborne and become pilots and become special ops. I mean, nobody makes you do any of that stuff. You do it because you've chosen to challenge yourself and represent your country. Those are the most impressive people I think I've ever met. And so to meet somebody who survived an experience like Marcus survived in Lone Survivor, that's a movie that really touched me.
Okay, now, what's your favorite music to listen to?
I used to play trumpet. I like music. I like all kinds of music. I lean toward instrumental. The song that I listened to when I'd race was Flying in a Blue Dream by Joe Satriani. And it's a pretty obscure guitar song, and it's got kind of a driven beat to it. And it was me. I mean, I'm not going to be a heavy metal guy. I'm not going to be life of the party. But I've got this soul that beats inside me that when I'm inspired, I can get some things done. And that music just seems to bring the best out of me. And so if I don't have that music on a playlist, I mean, I can be sitting in the car and close my eyes and I can hear it and feel it pulse. And, I mean, I used to love Yanni. I mean, there was the ultimate inventor of a new style of New Age music, and some of the individual soloists who would stand up and just play their hearts out. I mean, I can identify with people like that do it just because they have a pure passion for something. If I hadn't made a career in racing, I was kind of far enough along with my trumpet that I probably would have done something with music.
What do you think about Kenny G?
I'm not as fond of saxophones. I think he's brilliant. Certainly, if you're in a romantic mood, you couldn't go too far wrong, playing some Kenny G. But I played the trumpet, but I really have learned to like stringed instruments, guitars, violins. I'll tell you what I also really enjoy, and I've got a few on my playlist, are John Williams and some of his movie themes. To take music and weave it into a motion picture as a soundtrack really makes or breaks the movie in many respects. So I'm pretty fond of that type of music. It's just a quiet inspiration. I don't need to crank my radio up, and I was never into the boombox era. But quality music, quality performance, where you know with your eyes closed that there's a performer. Here's an example. I went to Bike Week one year, and almost everybody's in black leather. And there's a lot of hard, Thorogood music and all that stuff playing. And I love it all. But we went to a place called the Bank and Blues, Main Street, Daytona, with three young guys, probably all in their early 20s, with flowered shirts and khaki shorts. And they did that theme from Pulp Fiction and just blew everybody away. And what did it was the lead guitarist didn't just play it perfectly. He played it perfectly while making eye contact with people in the balcony and people all over this was a bank that was turned into a bar. And I've never forgotten that. I've never forgotten three guys in the Bahamas the first time I went there in 1972 or 3, I guess it was, who just played with just incredible passion, and they played some native music, but they just had a passion and they engaged the audience. And anyway, that to me is inspiring.
All right, now, what would you consider to be the fondest memory of your drag racing career?
Well, probably two after blowing the body off Nitro Nick, getting back in and qualifying. But winning the final round at Bakersfield, we got really lucky beating Chad Head. My wheel stand, I was on it and off it and back on it, and it kept going higher and higher. So it was a pretty ugly run, and luckily he smoked the tires and we win. So I'm racing Stephen Densham. He chooses the right lane. You know what I told you about the right lane in Bakersfield. Right. So I go to the left. And so I'm back in my lane. I'm back in my zone. I got Paul Smith in front of me. I've never won a final round. I've been to 3 or 4 of them. So I'm feeling pretty good. But Stephen Densham and Gary are in the other lane, and their car was a little quicker. So we do the burnout, back up, go up the stage, and I got Paul in front of me, and he's looking pretty confident. I'm feeling really good. And almost immediately, I look up and I see Stephen Densham turn on his pre-stage and his stage. And at first I thought, oh boy, I better get in pretty quick. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm in control now. And I didn't waste any time, but I pulled my pump on and stepped off the clutch, my visor and everything before I even pre-staged. And then I went pre-stage, stage, and I caught an 030 light, and we win the final. So I get to the end of the racetrack, and when Paul Smith and Henry and the whole crew come down there in the golf carts and blowing the horns and yelling at the top of their lungs, and Paul didn't yell, "You won." He yelled, "You cut an 030 light," and then a couple of words that I'd have to bleep. But that was a pretty special moment. And then seeing the pic, I mean, I learned of all the things you learn. You get to the end of the track at a national event, and there's TV and all kinds of stuff. You get to the end of the track, even in the final round of Bakersfield. When I made that turnoff, there was me and one other guy. There was a tech guy there, and he shook my hand, and he, was a nice guy. But I'm as excited as I've ever been, and I'm by myself. And it seems like it takes forever, and then all of a sudden this parade comes from the starting line down to the end of the track, and we celebrate. That was an incredible moment. The winner's circle was amazing. And the strangest thing is I didn't plan on getting to the final round, so we had a 10:30 flight out of L.A. 7 o'clock, we're still up in Bakersfield taking pictures, and I'm still in my fire suit, and I know there's no way we're going to catch the 10:30 flight, so I wasn't even in a hurry, and Vicki and I decided we're going to just spend the night, have a glass or a bottle of wine, and enjoy it. Then we started pricing Monday flights home, and it would have been like, $800 a piece to change our flights. So she found an 11:30 red-eye into Detroit. So here we are. I'm holding a Wally. I'm hot and sweaty, and I'm just excited because we just won Bakersfield, and I'm sitting by myself in a middle seat for 4.5 hours, and she's in a middle seat in another row. And that's how we got home from Bakersfield and waited there 3 hours. And I mean, I'm thinking to myself, geez, if I'd have just red-lighted, we'd be home in bed by now. But it was a pretty special day.
So what time did you finally get out of that fire suit?
Well, I got out of the fire suit about maybe about 8 o'clock or so, 8:30. I mean, we just barely made the 11:30 flight out of L.A., but we did, and eventually got home the next day, and I called in and said, I'm not coming in. I'll see you tomorrow. But it was really exciting. When I got to DSR, they had we got a vinyl shop inside the building now, and they made this big poster and put it across my door when I got there with a picture of the final round. And I mean, that was exciting.
I know. How important do you think it is for kids to come out and watch drag racing in this day and age?
Well, if all they're going to do is come out and watch, I mean, I'd certainly welcome them to come out. But for those that get a little bit more involved, and we tried to do that with the YES program, is encourage people to really watch other people work and see what people are doing. Not everybody's a driver, not everybody's a mechanic. There's social media professionals and medics and chefs and engineers and graphic artists and marketing personnel and all these different careers all weave into our sport. So I think it's important for people to go to events like NHRA events and imagine being involved and how could they fit in and what could they do. And we work with a robotics club in Brownsburg, and here's 5 young people that aren't just going home and sitting on the couch and playing video games. They're producing things that will enable them to then produce better things and better things and better things and become part of a team that ultimately someday, as individuals, will become very valuable to a company trying to design whatever. They're making things with their hands, which we did when we were that age, only we did it in metal shop and wood shop. Today they're doing it with computers and CAD and SolidWorks, but they still have to design, fabricate, weld. Some of the stuff they make, they may use a 3D printer. But they're preparing themselves for a career where they can make a difference and where they can provide for themselves and their families. And to some extent, that's what I like about DSR. That's what I like about the YES program that we envisioned many years ago at NHRA. And there are an untold number of people, and I have no way of knowing how many people come to a YES program and listen and meet drivers and other professional people and trade business cards and maybe follow up and build a career based on that experience. But I know several personally. Mike Halstead races a Nostalgia Funny Car, and I met him at a YES program in the 1990s. And he went to a trade school, and he's worked his way through various technical, first a very highly technical education, and he's made a living doing the kinds of things that we love to do, and he races a Nostalgia Funny Car, and is very good. And actually, in one of his rides, they traveled all the way. I raced against him at Maple Grove, of all places. So there's somebody I met at a YES program in the 1990s in Pomona, and to me that was very satisfying. Mike's turned out to be a great family man. I love the guy, but he's a great example of what NHRA and the YES program could do to give people who have an interest some direction and some inspiration to go do it on their own and make it.
Yeah, and his daughter Michaela is driving that junior dragster.
Yep.
The Nitro Princess.
Yep. Great family, great people.
Yeah, I had Mike on my show, and I had Michaela on my show.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
great people. Great people, and that's where I met Mike.
So this next question, Mike, you don't have to answer it if you don't want to answer it. It's just I'm going to ask it anyway, though. Do you support the President of the United States?
I support every president of the United States.
Very good. Well, Mike,
I support the policies of this one in most respects.
Right.
I think he shoots himself in the foot too many times. But, I respect the system in America where we elect a president, and we should support our president. If we don't like our president, we have the opportunity in 4 years, to vote for a different president. And I've voted for presidents that I maybe wish I hadn't voted for. And I've voted for a lot of presidential campaigns, but I respect the office of the president. I respect the fact that every president who has ever been elected to that office has been elected through a legal procedure put in place many years ago involving an electoral college and all that stuff. I respect that. I respect the United States of America. I don't respect all the behaviors. Mitch Daniels was an acquaintance when he was the governor here in Indiana, and he's now president of Purdue. And on one occasion, when his name had been thrown in the ring to run against Obama, would have been in Obama's second term, 2012. I said to him, you would be a great president if they let you run the company from here, meaning Indiana, where he'd be surrounded by real people, not lobbyists, not media, not people that spend 24 hours a day working on photo ops and all that other stuff. And he said, you're funny you'd say that. We kind of joke about that all the time. And I don't know that he used the word swamp, he said, but I just always didn't care for the politics in Washington, D.C., and I feel very strongly that way. It's sad. I believe in America. Let's put it that way, and I do support our president.
Okay. Well, Mike, I want to thank you very much for taking the time to do this interview.
Well, I'm not sure how much time we've spent. It's gone by pretty quick.
I think
the opportunity.
It's been over 2 hours.
Has it really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I have the record or not, but I've enjoyed it, and thank you for the opportunity.
I enjoyed listening to all your stories. It was a great interview, and that we'll do another one in the future.
Okay, look forward to it. Thanks, Dave, and we'll catch soon.
Okay, you have a great night, Mike.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.